Hey there, and welcome to the first and probably last edition of Charashland, where we do reports as if we were back then. But now. Don't ask. So our first story today is that of the Atlantic Charter. The Atlantic Charter was a meeting between Winston Churchill and Franklin Delano Roosevelt, two of the Allied powers during World War II. Keep in mind, Russia wasn't invited. Well, I mean, nobody likes Russia. Stalin's over there killing his people. We don't like that. You know, what are you going to do? The purpose of this meeting was to establish a post-war world of democracy. Our second story of the day, probably more important than the first, but also involving FDR, is that of his first 100 days in office. FDR was the first president with which the first 100 days of office became very important. During FDR's first 100 days, Congress passed 15 major acts that became known as the First New Deal. The first matter of business dealt with in the new plan was that of the banks. They were all closed, they need to be open, the public need to be satisfied. Big problems there if the banks don't open. Roosevelt declares a national holiday, closes all the banks, but the following week, everybody's open. This had a lot to do with the Emergency Banking Relief Act. This act was passed after only 38 minutes in the Senate. That's ridiculous. Just 3 days later, Roosevelt holds his first fireside chat. These were a sort of ingenious plan to get the president into the homes of the Americans. For Roosevelt and the media, most information learned about presidents and candidates and political things in general happened second hand, third, fourth, fifth hand. Now, with the radio, people could hear what the president was saying for themselves. It was a perfect way for FDR to get the citizens on his side, and it worked brilliantly. Some other notable things done by the New Deal was the foundation of many government things. All in all, the first New Deal was an alphabet soup. There were so many deals passed that it's hard to keep track of them all. Just to shoot off a few of them were the National Industrial Recovery Act, the National Recovery Administration, the Securities and Exchange Commission, the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, and the Public Works Administration. The Americans needed something to get ourselves on our feet. We were caught in a downward spiral. There was nothing we can do, we needed help. FDR gave us that in his New Deal. And now for our third story, Ben on the front. Well, don't tell him. We don't have the budget right now to send him to Germany. Yeah.
So as you can see behind me, the Germans have totally wrecked everything behind me, completely wrecked the Polish countryside due to Blitzkrieg. For those that don't know at home, Blitzkrieg means lightning war in German. It started in Poland, and in a month it completely ravaged Europe. Blitzkrieg put the Allies on their heels. It was quick, it was deadly, and it was effective. Through tanks and airplanes, Germany was quickly winning the war. Britain was at Germany's fingertips. Without America's help, Germany would have won in a couple months. It was only through luck and strong nationalism that the Allies weathered the storm.
Yeah.
And back to the studio.